Right, hello. So as you can see from the title, this is old Freddy versus new Freddy. So just to start, I've had this older video for a while and I wanted to do something with it. Now, it's important to understand how old Freddy used to work and how new Freddy works, and we're going to look at footage of both. This is all ad-lib, by the way. It's not. I don't really know what I'm going to be saying or exactly when. So old Freddy, he was a tracking killer, but you couldn't see him. And the main important thing about his power was he had to put you to sleep himself. Now I mess up a bit, I'm sure I do. But he had to put you to sleep himself. That was his power, putting you to sleep. And once he'd done that, he could hurt you. The thing is, he couldn't hurt you at all if he didn't put you to sleep. If he hadn't put you to sleep, he didn't put his hand out, put you to sleep, he couldn't interact with you at all. Couldn't interact with you at all. And this led to people to believe he was incredibly weak, because there was things that he just couldn't do. He couldn't pull you off the hatch, he couldn't pull you off a gen, he couldn't just hit you off a gen if it was nearly finished. There was so much he couldn't do. But then on the flip side, you heard me say, or I believe I said, he was a tracking killer. And he was. Because once Freddy puts you in the dream world, in Dead by Daylight, once he puts you in the dream world, then outside of his terror radius of 32 meters, he had permanent aura reading, and that on its own is incredibly powerful, and you'll see some of that in this. But what it really meant was, if you was asleep, you couldn't really get away from him. There was nowhere you could hide and feel safe. It meant, so there you go, in the dream, I believe she's up here. And what it kind of meant was, and that's the important thing right there. What I want to point out there is there's a delay. See, that's a terrible bolt. There's a delay between the moment he uses his power. I believe it was 7 seconds. From the moment he used his power to put you to sleep, you had to wait about 7 seconds, and then they turn like have this white aura around them, and then that means he was asleep. Now, as soon as you hook them, they wake up. But you'll see, I can see somebody over there, and that's the aura. That's the permanent aura reading, and that's because she's asleep. So there's nowhere really she can go to fundamentally escape me. Now, I was assuming there might have been a window up there, she'd have dropped through the back. She did it from the front. That's a hit. And this led to a really kind of a feeling between different levels of skill players, whereby that was unlucky. Different levels of skill players don't make that. That if you was not very good at the game, then Freddy was really obnoxious, because as I just said, escaping him once he'd put you to sleep was I can't say impossible. It was impossible because you could wake. There was things you could do to wake back up. But once he put you to sleep, if you didn't wake up, then it was really obnoxious because you couldn't really get away from him. On the flip side of that, because he couldn't interact with you if he hadn't put you to sleep, then it meant there were times when he was literally powerless. As I said, he could not interact with you, and I wish in some way that I demonstrated that in this video, but I never recorded it with the intention of ever uploading it anywhere. I just recorded it at the time. because I knew there was change in him, and I wanted something to look back on. So here we go, put to sleep, and now there's going to be a 7-second delay. She's going to carry on running, and she fell asleep, and there's nowhere she could really go there. There was nothing to go. But these players, to be fair, I've got to say as well, these are not necessarily great players. While I'm here, I want to quickly speak about the perks that I'm running. So I've got barbecue and chili. Barbecue and chili is a perk I run almost all the time. It increases my blood points and it gives me aura readings whenever I hook a survivor if they are more than 40 meters away. We'll go over some other perks later. I'm running monitor and abuse. The reason for monitor and abuse reduces my terror radius outside of a chase, and it increases it inside of a chase. So I saw that, so now she's asleep. Then she's awake for the bit. Led me to her. I don't know where the hell she's gone. I don't know how that even happened. But you can see the aura readings are telling me everything I need to know. Oh no, one of them's up there. I saw one of them just there. Monitor and abuse, as I was saying, I'm getting distracted. Reduces my terror radius outside of a chase and increases it in a chase. This is good for Freddy because his power with his aura reading is all about his terror radius. If you make his terror radius smaller, well then he can see you anywhere, virtually anywhere. So that's why I've got that. I've also got Remember Me, which is one with a claw. Basically you chase your obsession and you build stacks, and it increases the timer that they have to hold on the exit gate. It's really good for Freddy if everybody's asleep because he already has an automatic slowdown in his kit. Basically if you're asleep then you do everything at a reduced rate. And the final one was Huntress Lullaby, which they got. It was a hex perk and they cleansed the hex and got rid of it. But that one just makes the skill checks harder. So there's the first one dead. That's my obsession dead. I can see from barbecue that someone was... Is that barbecue? No, that's not barbecue. Yeah, I'm trying to play a bit stealthy, see what she's going to do. Get her out in the open. And there's really not a lot of places she can go. So she's down. And yeah, it was very interesting. I mean, I don't demonstrate, unfortunately, why some people would have said this Freddy was weak. And it doesn't look that way now, but I have to say these survivors aren't really playing very, very strong. They're leaving loops when they probably shouldn't be leaving loops. They're not actually looping when they should be looping. There's a lot they're not necessarily doing right. So that was her first hook. So there's somebody over there. You can see that with the aura. She's round the back somewhere. There you go. And again, that's because she's asleep. And if I remember rightly, no, Freddy had to put you to sleep. There was no random episodes of sleep. But because I know that I've got to put them to sleep, I don't actually make any. If I was to just swing at them while they were awake, it would go right through them. It wouldn't injure them. Again, what this meant was that Freddy, at certain points in the game, there was literally nothing he could do. Towards the end of the game, if they was to get the gate. If someone was to go for the gate and Freddy didn't have you asleep when you went for the gate, it was done. It was absolutely done. Because it'd take about 15 seconds to open the gate. Oh, that's what these add-ons do. These add-ons extend the power rate, extend the power range. So she's down. I don't notice there's only 2 gens been done during all this. A part of that is his automatic slowdown because them asleep. It takes them much longer to do the gens. I think, does she get off my shoulder? So yeah, there's some automatic slowdown. He had the tracking, but I think what was interesting about Freddy's power at this point was it was more lore based. And there was a better reason to want to wake up, because he couldn't hurt you if he wasn't awake. But for new survivors, for people that were new to the game, he was an incredibly efficient killer, because new survivors don't know how to loop, they don't know where the best tiles or pallets are, and then you've got this killer that can find you virtually anywhere, and make it incredibly hard for you to get away. So for new players, he was literally a nightmare, hence his name. For what's he plays that? Now this is interesting. I remember this bit. See, now I knew she was there, and this is what I mean. This is something you could do if you lost track of survivors with Freddy. You just do that. Just back up, get them outside your terror radius, and everybody's highlighted. So I know she's there. I know that other girl's back there. So I'm going to chase this one down. As you can drop the pallet. And that's what a new survivor did. Wasn't looking behind her, wasn't looking at where I was. And now I can see where she is. So I'm going to try and get her. I'm going to leave her on the floor because I want the 4K. And she's down. Check, that's the basement. There you go, and the aura reading will come up again in a bit, and I'll use it to find her on the ground. Other characters would have to run something like Deerstalker to find them on the ground. Well, not find them on the ground, but get an aura reading of them on the ground. But this old Freddy, he didn't have to do that. He had it built into his kit. He had nurses. Yeah. Well, not nurses. He had almost everything. But new survivors, he was really obnoxious because they didn't know how to loop, and they couldn't really hide from him. But good decent survivors, that wasn't the case at all. Decent survivors would just loop him terrible. They'd wake up, there's nothing he could do, they'd teabag him at the exit gates. If the gate was open and there was teabagging, or whatever they was doing, being obnoxious, again he had to wait 7 seconds to put him to sleep. He was powerless. So high ranks and stuff, he would get absolutely cleaned up, and at low ranks he'd decimate people. So they changed him. They said, okay, we hear you. He's the weakest killer in the game, which he was. Again, low ranks he used to do alright, but otherwise, any other rank he used to get decimated. He was the weakest killer in the game because he couldn't act, and he had to wait 7 seconds before he could act. And they can do it. It sounds silly, but 7 seconds is a long time not to be able to do anything when a gen's at 99%, or a totem's about to be cleansed, or a gate's about to be opened. 7 seconds is a very long time not to be able to do anything. And he took a lot of flack. So they reworked him, and now we're going to look at the rework. So before we do that, I'm just going through the build here. So that right there, Sloppy Butcher. Save the best for last is an obsession perk that's going to allow me to, by hitting survivors that aren't my obsession, that allows me to build up, get my cooldown shortened after an attack, because you have a cooldown that'll get shorter. Pop goes the Weasel. If I kick a gen, then I'll regress it by 25% if I kick a gen after I've hooked a survivor. And those two ropes, I'm going to change one, I believe. One increases the sound of generators being worked on, and the other one increases the sound of survivors in pain, and that one increases the sound of their footsteps. I have Sloppy Butcher on to increase their bleeding frequency, which would have worked with that green one better than that purple one that I've changed it to. And Barbecue and Chili again, aura reading. After I've hooked a survivor, I get 40 if I'm outside of 40 meters, well, then I'll see their aura, which is pretty cool. I'm just clicking through, seeing what I've got there. I got Right of the Nightmare there, which is just the dream catcher event. It's no big deal. I'm in the game. I'm on, interestingly enough, Frederick's map, his own map. Now, his powers completely changed at this point. He doesn't put you to sleep anymore. Instead, you get automatically put to sleep the first time you hit. And you have a bar, if I recall, where you will fall asleep randomly anyway. Now, I heard someone down there. There you go. Now she's asleep. Now, what's the point of putting people to sleep now? Well, now the new Freddy. I won't use it straight away, and I'll talk about his powers as he starts to use them, or as I start to use them with him. So, come across a Dwight. It's always useful. Now, I thought he was going to. He did a good. What's it there? He didn't take that very wide though. These survivors are actually far better than the ones in the previous video, and I'm kind of pleased with this game, the way this game goes, because I had to work for it. I'm not saying I didn't work for the other one, but I spread a bit of damage. This is a good way to begin, spreading the damage out. There's 3 people that need to heal. That's 3 people that are probably not necessarily going to do a gen. And he messed that up. Should have dropped that. So that's the first hook. 5 gens left. 1 hook. And 2 injuries. So that's pretty good for Freddy, that is. But all I've got, I can hit them normally now. I couldn't do that back on the original Freddy. First gen's gone. I'm back on the Dwight. Now this is his main power. They're basically little traps, and what they don't do a lot. What they do is, if the survivor runs in through these little puddles, they get a slowdown, basically. And I lost Dwight. I don't know where he went, but it's okay because I know someone was back in here. See, now they see that? That slowed her down. Not a massive slowdown, but a bit of a slowdown. And when survivors are looping, that can be really important. I should mention, because you just saw that pallet drop out of nowhere, that at the moment there's a problem with the PS4 version of the game. Old consoles, last gen consoles. For some reason, it's not optimizing as well as it should, and you get little bits to skip. Nah, I messed that up. I feel like I lost her. She's still there. I could have done something about that if I'd gone the right way. Now she tries to run around it, because she knew it would slow her down, but by taking it wide, I got her anyway. So there we go. So yeah, it's dream snares. So the thing with the dream snares that's worth remembering is they're only a problem if you're asleep. So if you're awake and it hasn't already hit you, or you haven't fell asleep over time, because I believe you have a 60-second countdown before you'll automatically fall asleep regardless. So the dream snares, to slow you down, someone just triggered one. There's my Pop Goes the Weasel. That's 25% off that gen right away. And this is his second power. Freddy can teleport to the location of any gen. That gives him... And I did that because I was pretty sure, I had a feeling. I think Barbecue showed me he was there. He went to Dead Hard then. So I think, is this the first time Dwight's been down? I think it might be. This Dwight was trying to play it very smart. But he's not putting him to sleep anymore. He only puts him to sleep when he gets some normally. Because that was the big problem. That's what people didn't like. They didn't like that he had to wait 7 seconds before he could act. So he doesn't have to wait 7 seconds before he can act anymore. But it's strange. It feels that you're not in the law quite as much. So she dropped that. And I keep messing this up now. She's evaded me good then. But I should have been able to get her there. And again. This is not necessarily her playing extremely well, as opposed to me making really simple mistakes. I shouldn't be doing. Now she's down. But you'll see these survivors, unlike the last ones, they're actually trying to loop. They're actually trying to kind of win these chases. They're not running out in the open and stuff where you can get easier hits. They're doing gens. So I think I'm going to use Pop Goes the Weasel on this gen. Instant stopped it. I just saw Dwight, but I'm going to kick this pallet, get it out of the way. It's a fairly strong pallet. Tries to blind me. Probably shouldn't have done that, because that's a free hit. And now he's asleep. And I have 2 dream snares, you can see in the bottom left hand corner. Now this is mind gameable, this loop, but only if, and he wasn't going to run into the stairs because he knew he'd have to take a slow vault and that'd mess him up. So he tries to loop me all the way around the building. And it's horrible, to be fair, that this is actually a thing and it's possible to do it. I could have just broke down that wall and tried to make a shortcut, but all I'd have been doing is letting him take it. So I'm going to put a snare there. I'm going to put a snare down here. I'm going to put a snare here. And he caught him anyway. And that's enough for me to get him. So the snares, the slowdown on the snares, they do help. They actually help Freddy more than probably his tracking did. His tracking was good against like new players, but he had virtually nothing against decent players that knew how to loop. So his snares do actually help in chase, which is good. Now I can see there's a lot of survivors over there. So I'm going to use his teleport power. I'm going to go straight to this gen, and I'm so lucky that I do, because that is so nearly done. So I've just regressed it by 25% with my Pop Goes the Weasel. And that's one of the things that makes this Freddy a bit stronger. If he knows what gen you're on and which one's nearly done, and he's got Pop or something, he can really capitalise on it by simply just teleporting there after a hook. Ain't necessarily always going to work. You can still get gen rushed, but you know, it helps. Now I thought there might be someone around here, but they're not still here. So I'm going to put some snares around either side of this pallet. Might be just enough. And I'm going to put one there just in case they happen to come back while they're asleep. Because it's important to mention how survivors can wake up, and this is true for a lot of this is true for the old version and this version. So it used to be other survivors could wake you up. You could go up to another survivor and they could do an action to wake you up, or you could fail a skill check. It didn't matter whether it was healing, it didn't matter if it was a gen. You could fail a skill check. Failed skill check could wake you up. The new Freddy's exactly the same. You can still do all of that, but in addition, the new Freddy has these special clocks in the game that come up white when you're asleep, and you can find these clocks and interact with these clocks, and then an alarm will go off and that'll wake you up as well. It's just to give them something else to do really and have to run around for. You can still get survivors to wake you up, but with the new Freddy, each time a survivor wakes them up, then it's going to take longer. They've been back on it, so I'm going to pop it again, and it's nearly back to 0. And that says a lot about how powerful that is. There's one of them clocks. That clock could wake you up. Now I ain't going to try and tunnel. I'm going to try and go for this one here, but I missed. Okay. I think maybe I do end up going for the bell. So there's a clock again. Dead odd. She gives me a bit of a loop. I think I messed my power up. I think I turned my power up in a bit. But you can see with the gen regression and the pop goes the weasel and all that kind of stuff, I should have followed that road. And I have a bit of a mind game there. She thought I was going to carry on running around, so she jumped the pallet. I just back treaded and got it that way. Someone just ran around there. It was Dwight. Dwight's been doing Dwight things. So she's on the hook. Again, the game skipped a bit there. So we're going to go back to this gen. And I think I wanted to pop it. I think I do pop it. So I'm getting good pop the weasel value. That 25% regression is really important. It's very useful. Now I heard Bill. Because you're in the dream world, man, you ain't going to get that blind from there, Dwight. Because you're in the dream world, there seems to be a bit of an echo to everyone's sound. They're already a bit louder. So I don't know that there's a need for the add-on that increases their cries and stuff. Now I'm doing that just to try and scare them away, but it don't work. I never intended to, because when he teleports to a generator, he kind of, there's a blood husk that shows up. You might have seen it ever so slightly then. Now I'm going to put these down. I don't know if I'll get the best out of them or not. Not really, I don't think. I slowed him down a little bit, but not too much, because I had to kick the pallet. It's gone this way, and I just heard her drop down. I don't know why he went for that vault. I couldn't find. I kept getting stuck on stuff. And I go for this hook, but it's broke because I've put bloody Bill on it. That's silly of me. I can go for this chase. Do I commit to it? No. Sometimes it ain't worth it. Sometimes you just got to check where everything else, what everything else is going on, what else is going on. But that gen ain't doing nothing. That was a waste of a snare. Dream snares, little traps. Oh, I don't know whether this one's as good. It's better for chase, absolutely. It's far more mobile. It's fundamentally a better killer. But if it really coincides with his power, or what the lore of Freddy is, then I don't know. I mean, he never really put you to sleep himself anyway. And here we go, this is towards the end of the game now. This is my obsession, the last survivor, and she's down because she got stuck. Break down that breakable wall. And get her on a hook. The wiggling on your shoulders can really be off-putting. There's probably a lot more to be said about Freddy. His powers. He's been nerfed recently. because he used to get around certain perks that survivors had. And there we go. We've got iridescent everything. So yeah, that's old Freddy versus new Freddy. Genuinely speaking, new Freddy's the better killer. Old Freddy was fun. I kind of miss him a little. But yeah,